मेरा हमसफर मेरे साथ तू खड़ा। जिंदगी की बेबसी नाराएगी मुझको, मेरे दोस्त तू है सबसे बड़ा। कल एक नया सूरज आएगा, ये वक्त भी गुजर जाएगा। कि तू प्रभु है मेरा हौसला, मेरी ढाल तू, मेरी आस तू पिता। मौत के डर से क्यों अब जीना छोड़ूं मैं, मेरी जिंदगी तेरे हाथों में खुदा। कल एक नया सूरज आएगा, ये वक्त भी गुजर जाएगा। कल एक नया सूरज आएगा, हाँ हाँ, ये वक्त भी गुजर जाएगा। थोड़ी सी जिंदगी है, मंजिल अपनी ढूंढ ले। संघर्षों के इस डगर पे चलना अब तू सीख ले। बस पल भर की है ये रातें, आंसू अपने पोंछ ले। साथी होगा जब तेरा वो, दुख में भी खुशी मिले। कल एक नया सूरज आएगा, ये वक्त भी गुजर जाएगा। कल एक नया सूरज आएगा, हाँ, ये वक्त भी गुजर जाएगा। कल एक नया सूरज आएगा, ये वक्त भी गुजर जाएगा। इस सब से तो महिमा पाएगा, हाँ हाँ, ये वक्त भी गुजर जाएगा। ये वक्त भी गुजर जाएगा। ये वक्त भी गुजर जाएगा।
Well, good evening. My name is Rob Hansen, and I'd like to welcome you to this month's edition of On the Front Lines with the Emmanuel Hospital Association. I'm so glad that you've joined us and trust that you are settling in and will be with us for the next 45 minutes or so as we share with you a little bit of an update of what's happening with EHA. This is a particularly challenging time for India, as most of us are aware, as they have faced the dramatic challenges of the second wave of COVID that has been nothing short of has been exceptionally lethal among a large percentage of the population. And we're going to have the opportunity to give you a bit of an update tonight on exactly what is happening in India and exactly what the Emmanuel Hospital Association has been doing to address the issues that are dominating the news in India and affecting the lives of so many thousands and indeed even millions. Just a few comments before we begin. We're welcoming folks here in the U.S. We're coming to you from the Chicago area, and we know that there are friends of EHA tuning in and viewing in Canada. And then there are a number of our friends in India as well who have gotten up early in the morning, I know, to be a part of this, and also some probably further to the east in Singapore and Australia. So we're very, very glad that you've joined us, and we hope this will be a helpful and encouraging time for you. I would be remiss if I didn't express appreciation to those in all over the world, in India, in Canada, in the U.S., who have been so generous with their financial support for EHA during this time. We have been grateful to see the outpouring of and the generosity that God's people have brought to bear on the crisis that is facing India and that is facing EHA. And we are grateful for the support that you have given. We're also grateful for the prayer support that has been offered so prevalently in emails that have been communicated to me and to others involved with EHA's leadership. We are grateful. And so we ask that you would continue to pray, continue to give, continue to encourage others to become informed about what is happening with EHA in India and also with regard to what is happening in terms of COVID. Just by way of housekeeping, a few comments to those who are joining tonight with us. You'll see on your screen at some point someplace where, whether you're watching on Facebook or on YouTube, you'll see a chat stream. If you have a question that occurs to you that has not been addressed, we will reserve a few minutes towards the end of our time to take questions. And so if you'll share them in the chat stream with us, we will have the opportunity to take those, and those will be shared with me, and I can address our guests with those questions. Just a little bit of an overview for each of these On the Front Lines broadcasts. It's inevitable that we have people who don't know very much about the Emmanuel Hospital Association, and so I'd like to just give a brief overview. EHA is more than 50 years old and has served the poor and marginalized with healthcare and community development in North India through 19 hospitals and some 45 to 50 community health and development projects. It is the largest non-governmental healthcare system in India, and we are grateful to have the opportunity here in the U.S. to partner and serve alongside, shoulder to shoulder, with our colleagues who serve so faithfully with EHA. EHA, 200 doctors strong across North India, more than 1,000 nurses, and then more than 1,000 other allied health and support personnel involved in the work. So EHA, a very significant and a very impactful organization, well respected and appreciated in the communities in which they serve. I'd also like to share with you, if you're not aware, if you're here in the U.S. and you don't really have a good sense of India and what the size of India is, if you were to lay India down on the surface of the United States in terms of its size and scope, the north end of India would be across the border in Canada. The south end of India would be in Mexico. The westernmost portion of India would be near Salt Lake City, Utah, and the easternmost portion of India would be in about Washington, D.C. So that gives you an idea of India and the size of it, and the population about 4 times that of the United States, something on the order of 1.1 billion people and great opportunity for caring for people and demonstrating the love of Christ. In a moment, we're going to bring our guests in, but I was intrigued by a video that we're going to show you. It gives a good sense of some of the innovative approaches that the medical personnel in the hospitals in EHA, the approaches that they've taken. This runs about 4 minutes and addresses the specific issue that has been a terrible crisis in India, and that is access to oxygen canisters, and so on, that have been greatly in gravely short supply. And so let's watch that video, and then we will bring our guests in for the balance of the time. So a helpful overview that provides some insights into the particular innovative approaches that are often implemented in EHA's hospitals in order to serve patients that are in need. Many of the kinds of infrastructure tools and materials, equipment that we take for granted with regard to medical care here in the United States and in many other parts of the world, those items are simply not available in ready supply in the hospitals that serve millions and millions of the poor in areas of rural India, the areas where EHA's hospitals and personnel serve. So that has hopefully given some insight into the things that they face every day, not just during COVID, but more generally as well. All right, I'm very, very delighted to invite three of EHA's very talented leaders in with us once again tonight, and we'll bring them in and I'll introduce each of them to you. So joining us from Duncan Hospital in Bihar, which is in the northern portion of India, is Dr. Saira Mathew. Dr. Saira is the Executive Director of EHA, and so she leads the entire EHA team, and so I'm hoping we can bring Saira in. And there's Saira. So nice.
Hi, everyone.
Hello, nice to see you, Saira. We're so glad that you're here.
Good morning and good evening.
EHA's staff team is divided into various regions, and so we have two of the regional directors that are also joining us. Dr. Rebecca Sinate, who is the who is the director of the Northeast region, and then also Margaret Kurian, who is the regional director for the North region. Each of these ladies has responsibility to oversee the personnel at several hospitals, and so I think that Margaret will be joining us as well. So, ladies, we need to say good morning to you because it's very early in India.
Yes.
We're glad that you're with us. It's what time is it? What time is it for you, Saira? I have trouble doing the calculations.
It's 6:15 a.m.
Okay, well, very good. You both look very energetic and very awake.
Yes.
For 6:15 in the morning. So we're very glad that you've joined us. Well, we're going to begin our discussion tonight looking at some of the kinds of things that are happening with COVID in India. And Dr. Rebecca, you're going to share with us just a little bit of some of the things that are happening in India as a whole, and then also some of the trends that we are seeing in Delhi, and then also in the rural north and northeast, where many of EHA's hospitals. So take us away, give us a little bit, take it away, give us a little bit of an overview of what's happening with COVID.
Yes. Good evening once again, and namaste. India leads the world in increasing number of daily average number of new COVID infections, which is accounting to almost 1 in every 4 new infections reported worldwide. Overall, in India, the average positivity rate is around about 6.2%. And across India, we have more than 8 states, which is showing more than the national average. The states are Maharashtra, Goa, Chhattisgarh, Kerala, Nagaland, West Bengal, Madhya Pradesh. And then the COVID second wave started in India in March 2021 this year, which is reflecting a very steep rise of COVID-19 infection across the country. In March, it was 10 million infection cases, and it's moving up to around 18 million in April. And then now in June, till the second week of June, it is around about 29 plus million infection cases. This steep rise in the COVID infection cases all across the country is mainly because of the reopening of public places after the first wave, and there has been a big religious public gathering across the country. And there was also, unfortunately, a crowded election rallies which was going on across the countries. And then, of course, non-compliance to the preventive norm. This was really challenging. And then there is some false sense of normalcy when the number of cases started dipping towards the end of December and January. And then non-heeding to the COVID guidelines by many of the states, and even to the warning signs, which was reflected by the doctors and scientists again and again in the media. So unfortunately now, as of 12th June, we have 29 plus million infections with 0.36 million deaths
29 million
reported in the country since the pandemic started. And the capital of India, Delhi, is showing around about 1.4 million cases of COVID infections with death rate of around 1.7%. But fortunately, recovery rate in Delhi is reflecting quite high now, which is around about 1.3 million recoveries out of the 1.4 million infection cases.
Well, that's
so if we look at, yes.
I was just going to say that's helpful, and just so all of our viewers know, what we can do is we can take Dr. Rebecca is sharing with us some statistics, and if you're like me, you're having trouble kind of processing those statistics. But what we'll do is we'll take and put those on our website over the next day or so that you can go to ehausa.org and you can be reminded of these statistics, so you kind of get a little bit of a feel for it. So please continue. Go ahead.
Yes. The 19 hospital in Emmanuel Hospital Associations are working in the states which are having high number of infections. For example, like Uttar Pradesh is 1.70 million, Maharashtra is 5.89 million, Uttarakhand, where our hospitals are based, 0.33 million, Bihar we have 0.71 million, Jharkhand 0.34, Chhattisgarh 0.98, and Assam, which is northeast part of India, 0.45. Across EHA hospitals, the COVID-related statistics as on 10 June are as follows. I will highlight it. Outpatient department, we have seen more than 5,000 cases. Admitted cases, we have around 2,424. And referral cases reported across the hospital is 351. And some cases we have, LAMA, we call it, people who left again medical advice. We have around about 49. And deaths, which is 315. And then home quarantine in the community, those primary cases, around 583. So we have death rate of around about 13%.
I was going to ask you the total bed strength. What is the total bed strength of EHA at any one time? Maybe that's a question for Sarah.
Yes, I think, ma'am. Yeah. Later on, my colleague will present anyway. I'm just putting up the COVID-related statistics. Yes, so compounded with the increasing number of COVID cases, there are high comorbidity cases, mostly diabetes, hypertension, heart disease, even immunocompromised states such as HIV/AIDS infection. This is really, contributing and compounding to the high number of COVID deaths. In June 21, fortunately, as I said, Delhi has been showing now good recovery rate compared to the rest of the state, which is around about 97%, and it is followed by Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, and Haryana showing around 94% recovery rate, and Maharashtra, Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh are showing around 93% rate. But having said that, accuracy in the number of COVID-19 infection and death reports is a very sensitive issue. And there are some circumstances where they may be even under-reporting, like deaths at home may not be reported, and even there may be some false negative COVID test reports. So all across the states, even in terms of the health delivery system and the collections of reports may not be the same. So it may not be the real picture. So sometimes the accuracy of the data is also a big challenge.
Yeah. Now,
And now, yes.
in the U.S., there's been tracking of what we've referred to commonly now as excess deaths. And has there been tracking in India as best as you're able of excess deaths, or is that perhaps that's not not possible?
And then vaccination status. This is another big challenges in the country. As on 13th June, first those who had received the COVID vaccine is just round about only 15% of the populations. And those who have received 2 doses of COVID vaccine, which are considered to be fully immunized, is only around about 4%. There are lots of challenges associated with these vaccinations, such as there is shortage of free supply of the COVID vaccines all across the government centers. And then we have high vaccine price there at the private center, which is not accessible to many people. And then sensitization and awareness among the community for mobilizing them for vaccination is also still a challenge because there is lots of misconception about the vaccine in itself. And of course, there is state-wise differences in the COVID vaccination drive.
Yeah.
So this is all I could share in short.
Yes. Yeah, that's very helpful. Thank you very much. These are some of the same kinds of challenges that other countries are facing as well. But obviously, the communications infrastructure is in some areas of India is not what it needs to be with regard to making sure that people are aware. And then obviously, access to the vaccines is something that is a great challenge with respect to many of those who are poor. Is there, Rebecca? Is there any? How do people feel about vaccination in India? Are they comfortable with being vaccinated, or are they not? What is the feeling?
Not really. There is still so many misconception about it because sometime in the news, after people get through vaccination also, they're still being infected. Some death cases are being reported. So obviously there is lots of alarms and, people are not comfortable at all. So we need to do lots of awareness on the benefits of the vaccine itself.
Yeah, that has been echoed here in the U.S. as well. I know. It appears that Margaret must be having connection issues, and so Sarah, maybe I'll turn to you with an initial question, and we can go from there. So once again, Dr. Saira Paulos is the Executive Director of EHA, and she has been serving that position. She actually came into her role in the middle of COVID. So your first days on the job were the first days when the first sort of lockdown occurred last year, and so you've seen great challenges with your leadership responsibilities with EHA. But maybe you'd like to comment on what your first year has been like, but also maybe share a little bit about some of the equipment. I think you're going to tell us a little bit about some of the equipment that would help EHA.
Yeah, I took over as Executive Director in last year, April, and started off with the COVID first wave. So I've not been going to the office. We are working from home. So if I total up the days I have been in the EHA office, maybe 100 days out of the 15 months. But in the midst of all the challenges, I'm quite proud to say that EHA has been able to serve so many in the areas where we have been located. So if this current year, out of the 19 hospitals, 16 of our hospitals have been COVID centers. For mild cases, we were able to treat them with paracetamol and send them with pulse oximeter for those who could afford to buy it, and thermometer, so that they could manage at home, and we gave them the preventive measures. But moderate to severe cases, we had to admit, and the equipments which we required were oxygen concentrators, ventilators, non-invasive ventilation, that is CPAP and BiPAP. And for really severe cases, we had to put them on, we had to intubate them and ventilate. But the challenges which we faced were we didn't have enough equipment. We didn't have enough beds because our infrastructure is very old and we couldn't cater to many of the patients who came to us. We had to send away many of the patients due to lack of beds, lack of adequate equipment, lack of facilities for doing specific tests for these cases, and much more than that due to non-availability of inadequate oxygen supply. So those were the issues which we faced this year in this COVID wave, which was quite severe.
Yeah. Now we're having some questions that are coming in. Maybe I could ask, I'm not sure who would be best to answer this, but one of the questions that's been asked is, are you seeing is the variant the same variant that is being seen in other parts of the world, or what's your view on the variants? And I'm not sure whether you should take it or Rebecca or who. So
We have the variant B117, B1351, and recently last week reported cases of the Delta variant in India.
mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. So, Margaret, welcome. We're glad that you're here. This is Margaret Kurian, who has joined us. I know that Margaret has been facing some challenges with regard to her connection. So we'll see how this goes. This happens from time to time. It's a little bit unpredictable, so we just we roll with the punches, as we say. And so we're happy to do that. So, Margaret, we're glad that you've joined us.
Thank you.
Yes. Margaret, maybe you could share with us a little bit about the way that EHA's hospitals have been slated. You know, it's sometimes it's hard for us to get our minds around exactly what the hospital and the medical care system is in India. And I do know because of my visits, that there are in various areas, many government hospitals, private clinics, and so forth. And so the government has sought to weave together this network of hospitals. So maybe you could share a little bit about how EHA has been asked to treat COVID patients and how that has worked.
Okay. Good evening, Rob, and all our viewers on the other side of the Atlantic, and good morning to all who are watching from India. To answer Rob's question, the pandemic actually has brought a partnership between the government and the private hospitals. All our EHA hospitals were asked to treat COVID patients, and permission needed to be given by the district authorities to treat patients. 16 of our hospitals are treating them as inpatients, and the remaining hospitals treat them as outpatients and refer them to higher centers. And those that are treating them as inpatients take in moderate and serious cases. We do have support from the district authorities in whatever way they can help us. They have provided equipment at times, and though that was not adequate. But yes, there is a partnership. We need their support, their permission, and but we also are expected to meet the needs which the district authorities cannot help us fully with.
Yeah, well, that's I know that it's a significant challenge with regard to some of the networking, because not the reality is that there's been a lack of equipment, in particular with regard to oxygen and so forth. And I think we'll get into that in a little while. How have you managed to pay, cover the costs of these wards? I know that you've had to create wards for patients to be cared for that are separate in some cases. Maybe tell a little bit about how you've managed to do that.
A rearranging of non-COVID patients enabled most of our hospitals to make space for COVID patients. Hence, the need for new wards to be constructed did not arise. However, having said that, the need for extension of oxygen pipeline or installation of new oxygen pipelines was absolutely necessary, and definitely for the specific equipment that is needed for this type of illness. We are really thankful to our donors, both within the country and overseas, who rose to the occasion with a sense of urgency and provided the needed funds to enable our hospitals to pay for the alterations or the installation and for the purchase of the equipment.
So here you see some of the range, and it's those of you who are not as familiar with various EHA locations, you'll notice quite a range with regard to the various wards and so forth. Some of the units function in buildings that are in desperate need of repair and replacement, such as some of the ones you've seen, and then others, as you've seen, are really outstanding. And many have partnered with some of the hospitals in order to try to bring them up to the standard. Maybe we could talk for just a few minutes, Sarah, about oxygen. I know that oxygen has been the big issue in India, both the ability to refill oxygen canisters, equipment to do that. And I've learned a lot in the last few weeks about things like oxygen concentrator. I didn't even know what an oxygen concentrator was a few weeks ago, but I've learned a lot about it. Oxygen plants. Maybe you could share with us a little bit about what's needed, what you've been able to do, and what there is still to do, because we are still trying to raise resources for some of these kinds of tools. So maybe take a few minutes and share with us a little bit about that.
Oxygen concentrators are not the ideal for hospital setting. What we require is a continuous supply of oxygen. This was one of our biggest challenges in EHA because of a remote location. And especially in the COVID situation, the demand was high. Some of our hospitals have to travel 70 to 100 kilometers to fetch oxygen. And when there is a high demand, there were days when we were not sure whether we were going to get adequate oxygen supply for the patients who are already admitted in the wards. Few of our hospitals had to turn away patients because they didn't have adequate oxygen. You would have noticed the jumbo cylinders in which we fetch oxygen. We have smaller cylinders. So many of our hospitals will have to refill the cylinders from the nearest vendor. It could be 10 kilometers away, or it could be further than that. Then connect it to the pipeline which goes to the patient. But in an ideal situation, we should be able to generate oxygen within the campus and fetch it near the patient through pipelines. So that is what we are struggling with. Among the 19 hospitals, only 3 hospitals have oxygen plant. And this time, that also was not sufficient. We had to procure extra cylinders of oxygen to cater to the current need. Oxygen concentrators are quite cheap, but for a short period where we need to give less oxygen, like 3 to 5 liters or maximum up to 10 liters of oxygen for short periods, oxygen concentrators are helpful. But ideally, if we have to run a ventilator or a non-invasive equipment, we should have pipelines providing oxygen with higher purity and also at high pressure. And oxygen plant will cost about 40,000 to 80,000, depending on the amount of oxygen it provides. What we are looking at is, for smaller hospitals, it should be 100 liters of oxygen per minute. And for larger units where the bed strength is 200 to 250, we would require oxygen plants which can generate oxygen of 500 liters per minute. So the cost would range between 40,000 to 80,000 US dollars. To support the functioning of the oxygen plant, we would require fire extinguishers with continuous water supply. We will need a manifold with oxygen cylinders, and also a structure to hold all these equipment. So that would be an additional 50,000 US dollars.
Yeah, so the challenges are significant with regard to installation of these oxygen plants. But if we were able to put these oxygen plants in each of the hospitals, this would be something that would benefit EHA's care for patients on into the future, even non-COVID times. Am I right about that?
Yes, Rob, definitely, yes.
Yeah.
I'm in Duncan. I'm visiting a unit of EHA after 15 months. So one of the stories which they said was one patient came to the casualty. They were in the emergency and he was waiting for a bed. The staff were busy shifting a patient from casualty to the ward. And within that 10 minutes period, the patient died sitting just at the door of the casualty. So that was and the staff felt so terrible. Like, if we were able to give him some oxygen, probably we could have saved his life. So if you had adequate beds, the Duncan Hospital, now we have only 6 or 7 beds in the casualty, and it's in one of the old buildings. If we had a bigger casualty, probably we could have saved many more lives. We need not have turned away 500 patients, 500 or odd patients in various hospitals. So I think we will definitely be able to serve better.
Yeah, and those are the kinds of things that so often here in the U.S. and I know in many other areas around the world, in many Western nations, and also, correct me if I'm wrong, in many of the larger cities, the access to some of these kinds of medical facilities are much more readily available. It really is. We're talking about those who have no ready access to medical care outside of facilities such as EHA, and those facilities that are there near to them. And I know that many patients with EHA who have need will come and walk quite a distance, I think, or travel quite a distance, whether they walk or drive. How would it be typical? What kind of patient flow would you see typically at a hospital in terms of people coming? How far would they have to come?
There are patients who come from close by, but there are many patients who travel the previous day, especially in Duncan Hospital. Patients from Nepal come. They are in the hilly terrain, and they may have to start 1 day or 2 days in advance because they don't have transportation. So it would take 2-3 days for them to access treatment and go back.
Yeah.
But there are places where patient may take few hours. But added to that, they do not have local trains or other vehicles. So many of them will come in horse cart or on cycles, or by they walk to the hospital.
Yeah,
So each hospital, based on the location, I think it varies.
And that's very, very helpful, very instructive picture. And I do know that there at Duncan in the northern part of Bihar, because you're so close to the Nepal border, you really sit right on the Nepal border, that you have patients that will also come across the border into North India for caring. Let's turn a little back to Margaret once again and talk a little bit about some of the hardships and challenges that are being faced by EHA. I know that there are a number of challenges that are being faced, and I'm wondering, Margaret, if you can share with us some of those. Is Margaret with us? Maybe Margaret is not with us right now. I don't think Margaret is with us. So, Sarah, maybe you would like to just share with us a little bit. There are a few challenges in particular on a professional front that you're facing. Tell us a little bit about some of those, if you would.
Challenges, yeah. On the professional front, one of the hardships was shortage of nurses. As such, we are short of hands. And during the COVID season, even though our staff were vaccinated, many of them got infected. So we had to quarantine them. And we couldn't continue them more than 12 hours in each shift. So then staff were exhausted emotionally, mentally.
I think maybe we have lost Sarah as well due to a connection. So Rebecca, I don't know whether you want to pick up a little bit of an answer to that or not, but you certainly could. Oh, and Margaret's back. Okay, well, welcome back, Margaret. We're glad that you're here. So actually, Dr. Saira was just sharing a little bit with us about some of the challenges that people are facing. And maybe you could share a little bit about some of the challenges that people are facing.
Yeah. There have been several distinct aspects of the challenges that our staff have faced. On the professional front, there has been a shortage of nurses, with wards full and overflowing, with intensive care unit full. They needed more nurses. Emergency surgeries only were permitted, and therefore it was possible to pull out nurses from the operation theater, to assist and bring them into the intensive care unit and wards. However, the challenge here was, since they were not familiar with the specific equipment, the experienced nurses found it a challenge to teach and the freshers to learn on the job. So that really was one of the hardships that they faced. The other hardship was initially, when the second wave was at its peak, there was a dire need for beds. And so our hospitals admitted patients even though they were not adequately equipped with all the equipment and the supplies. The demand for oxygen, medicines, and equipment was much, much higher than the supply. And this posed a challenge for our healthcare workers to give the best possible care with limited supplies. Now, as we prepare for the third wave, as Dr. Saira has already mentioned, our hospitals have expressed the need for oxygen plants so that they will be able to generate oxygen and provide that without being dependent on external supply. Conveying the news of the death of a patient to the relatives is not easy at any time by the caregivers. What made it even more difficult was relatives challenging, questioning the death of their loved one. In some extreme cases, the police needed to be called in to handle the situation. The A demand of the relatives to discharge their patient against medical advice was another challenge on the professional front, as our nurses, our doctors knew that an untimely discharge would be risky. In one case, they did discharge as demanded. The patient was brought back the next day, dead on arrival.
Mm-hmm.
On the personal front, I would say the challenges have been physical, emotional, social, and even financial. In the heat of summer, staff have had to wear their personal protective equipment, not being able to have a sip of water, the demand of care required, the fatigue are just some of the physical challenges that our staff have experienced. On the emotional front, fear was very real. Even though our staff were wearing their PPE, they were afraid of contracting the illness. At least a good number of our staff. Seeing patients die daily, and on some days seeing more than one patient die, even up to 5 patients, has been very traumatic for our caregivers. In order to mitigate the risk of their family getting COVID, some of our caregivers thought it necessary to distance themselves from their families, even their little children, and this they found quite difficult. On the social front, most of our professional staff live on their respective hospital campuses. However, there are some who live off the campus. Social distancing was something that they experienced at a completely different level. As one staff put it, my neighbors think or look at me as if I am the virus, and they keep a good distance from me. While there is some humor in it, it shows us the reality of the situation and the sense of being ostracized because they are a frontline health caregiver. On some of our hospitals staff, some of our hospitals have also had financial challenges. In the last 12 months, with the lockdown, patients could not come to the hospital, to our hospitals. They came only when it was an emergency. When the lockdown was lifted, patients did not come as they would normally because some of them were afraid of getting COVID if they came to a hospital. Only emergency surgeries were permitted, no elective surgeries. All these various factors actually affected the income of our hospitals, and several of our hospitals have not been able to pay the salaries on time, and some of them still have a backlog of 2 to 3 months salaries to be paid. So the hardships that are the challenges that our staff have experienced have been multi-pronged, but we are so thankful to them that in spite of these challenges, they have held together and they keep pressing on.
Thank you very much, Margaret. We appreciate that overview. We're glad to have that update. And I do know that it has been a challenge. In some cases, EHA hospitals have taken patients that other hospitals couldn't handle because they were COVID centers. And now there are times in which people are afraid to come to the hospital because they're afraid they're going to get COVID. And there are a number of different dynamics that are a part of this. Our time is almost is coming to a close here, and I want to be very respectful of your time. We're so grateful for the fact that the three of you have taken time to join us, and I know that you all have full days of work and service at each of your specific hospitals that are in front of you. But Saira, maybe you could take a few minutes and just share with us a little bit about how people watching can best help EHA. Just share from your heart a little bit about what you'd like to say to those who are watching.
Yeah, thank you, Rob. We have been blessed by your generosity in getting our COVID ward and ICU set up in most of our hospitals. Our cure rate has been, or recovery rate has been more than 70%. And I'm grateful for each and every staff who have been in the front line taking care of our patients. It hurts us to send away patients. It hurts us to not having enough finances or equipment to adequately equip our hospital due to various factors which we have already mentioned. I would love to see that all our hospitals can continue to care for many in the coming days, whether it's COVID, whether it's dengue, many more epidemics and pandemics are coming, and seasonal variations are also there. I wish we had a better setup in terms of building equipment so that we don't have to turn away patients when they come with a crisis. Even otherwise, I would wish we would love to provide good care for all our patients, especially the poor and marginalized. I believe that these patients should receive the same care as everybody else. They also have the right to live. They also have the right to have a good health, whether it's COVID or non-COVID season. So I would love to see that happen in EHA. And we are ready to serve wherever we are kept. And we would appreciate your continued prayer support, whatever it is, for strength, courage to take up challenges, whatever comes to us. And also to be content with what we have and continue to serve people with what we have. This time and even last year, we didn't wait for all the equipment or finances to come our way. We just started with what we have. And that's the reason why we were able to care for more than 5,000 COVID patients this year. And we have treated more than 2,500 patients this year. And we have seen God's protection. Throughout EHA, many of our staff got infected, but no deaths, no morbidity even. They all got sick, but some of the doctors decided they won't test. In case they turn positive, they have to go into quarantine and they won't be able to care for patients. So they refused to test, continue to serve the patients in spite of having symptoms, weakness, all those. So I would value your support, continued support, so that together we can serve the poor and marginalized wherever we may be. So yeah, that's what, and thank you once again for all your contributions, without which we would not have been able to serve till now.
Well, thank you very much, Saira. We appreciate that. That's an encouragement and an inspiration. Please know that we stand with you. We continue to pray for you and the EHA staff all across North India, that you will be well provided for, and that you will know the Lord's strength as you serve day in and day out. And we are grateful for that. And we're grateful to you, all those of you around the U.S. and Canada and other parts of the world that have joined us. We just want to remind you that if you'd like to support us, you can visit the U.S. website at ehausa.org. And then you can also visit the Canadian website, ehacanada.org. And then you can also visit the India website. If you happen to be watching early in the morning in India, the India website is eha-health.org, eha-health.org. We're very grateful to have the opportunity to serve you. in whatever way we possibly would be helpful to you. If you have questions, please don't hesitate to call or to write. I'm available regularly to answer questions, and we are very, very appreciative of the opportunity to partner with you. So once again, thank you to Dr. Saira, Dr. Rebecca, to Margaret. We're so grateful for your getting up early and joining us and sharing with us. And please know that we are standing with you and want to see EHA be as successful as possible. Thank you again to all, and good night, and have a good day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.